Mr. Clark is here, the director of the Columbus Department of Public Safety, a native of Youngstown, Ohio. Director Clark is excited to return to his home state and take on the role at such a critical time. Director Clark believes his track record as a leader in innovative and service-oriented policing will help him advance change, build community trust, and keep Columbus residents safe. Without further ado, please help me welcome Director Clark. Thank you so much.
All right, brother. Yeah. Don't read all that.
I was looking him up. He got pictures all in the White House with the president and all kind of stuff. I said, "Oh, he's somebody." And so we're so glad to have you, Director Clark, here with us today. Says a lot. We originally had reached out to Chief Bryant, and we were asking that she be here with us, and she called me. She said, "David, I'm so sorry that I can't make it, but I got the perfect person that can fill in for me." And I think she got it right, you guys. I think she got it right. Director Clark, how you doing tonight, man?
I'm good.
You good
this evening? I'm good.
He
All
needs
good.
some help in his monitors too.
Hello, 1 2 1 2.
There we go. There we go. How you doing tonight, man?
I'm doing good.
Good. I want to just first and foremost say thank you for being here with us tonight. You're a man that has a lot of responsibilities, a huge role here in the city of Columbus, and for you to take the time to be here with us tonight, I want to say thank you.
You're very welcome. It's my honor to be here. This is a very critical conversation at a very critical time, so I'm honored to be a part of the conversation.
Awesome. Director Clark, one of the things that we as dads, when we talk to our dads and we're having conversation about the work that we get to do, we oftentimes like to ask our fathers a question that I want to propose to you, and that is simply, was your father involved in your life growing up?
The short answer to that would be no. So I grew up in Youngstown, Ohio, as I shared with you, and I'm always very transparent about this, being the son of biracial parents and my African-American father being 18 years older than my Italian mother in Youngstown, Ohio, when interracial relationships were not accepted and not a thing. My mother was disowned by her family, and I ended up in foster care at 4 years old. And I didn't go back home with my parents until I was 12. And then 6 months later, my father was shot and killed.
Wow. Definitely our condolences to you and your family on behalf of that. When you think about the role that fathers play in family, and you think about men in general, who was your first male role model growing up?
Ironically, that was a police officer.
Wow.
Who told me after I was getting in some trouble that he understood where I came from and that he believed in me and knew that I could do better. And
Wow.
It was actually that police officer who took the opportunity to impart some wisdom to me and be one of the first male role models that would speak to me and said that they believed in me. And that's why I understand the importance of building into our young people, particularly black fathers, black men, building into our young people and building into our communities, because you never know when you're going to have that opportunity to just tell a young man or a young woman that you believe in them and know that they are capable of better.
Wow. I'm going to say this. I don't want you to judge me, but I didn't hear that from police growing up when I was coming up. Unfortunately, they was patting me down and, oh, y'all looking crazy, like y'all squeaky clean too. Anyway, we'll move on. That's just a part of my transparency, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I think it's amazing because as African American in urban communities, we don't always have a great relationship with law enforcement. So I think that's so dope that you were able to have that experience and share that with us today, because I say it all the time. We do hear that a lot, but there's some amazing police officers that are policing our communities. And even when I think about my neighborhood growing up, we had some amazing cops that even when we were in the wrong, they were like, "Man, go on and go home. Get out the streets, get out of the way, get away from here, go home and do the right thing." So I think that's pretty amazing. Director Clark, tell me, how do you define a positive male role model. When I say that to you, what comes to your mind? And the reason why I'm asking you that is because growing up in the urban community, growing up in the inner city, oftentimes that's something that we don't see. Unfortunately, we don't have positive role models. We have the dope man. We have the guy with the 22s, or well, they ain't doing 22s. They probably got sixes or something now. Eights, 28s. No, I'm sorry, Magic Johnson's 32s. But that was what we seen. Is that's what we looked up to.
Sure.
And so when we think about role models and people we want to be like, oftentimes that's what we see. We want the car, we want the shiny stuff, we want the girls. What does that what when you think of positive male role model, what does that look like for you?
Well, let me explain it this way. When I was growing up as a young kid, and people would ask me, what was I going to be when I grew up? I said I wanted to be like my father, and I wanted to be a pimp. And I figured that that was the
Not
positivity
the
of my life.
director wanted to be a pimp. Okay, all right.
I was a
Yeah.
little young person then. But being a positive role model is really about modeling what you expect. And we would say, someone who's holding it down, right? And one of the things that is important to understand that before you spend money, you have to spend time.
Wow.
In my mentoring program, I tell those who want to be mentors one rule that I have. Before a kid is going to care how much you know, they're going to care how much you care. So that's really what it's about, is about building into them and modeling what you expect. And we say this across many different industries, but those who are mentoring our young people have got to model what they expect. If I want you to be on time, do your homework, do your chores, respect your mother, respect your home, whatever the case may be, you've got to be modeling that in your own life. So we speak about that because, as I learned very, very young, you teach in everything you do. So as director of public safety, as an FBI agent, all the other responsibilities that I've had, I recognize that I teach in everything I do. So positive role models have got to embrace that. And it doesn't matter if you're picking up trash or you're emptying trash cans. It doesn't matter what you are doing. Martin Luther King says, if you are going to be a trash man, then be the best trash
That's
man you
right.
can be,
That's right.
because it's about modeling. It's not about how much money you have. It's about how much you're building into the lives of people around you that you have the opportunity to influence. And many, many times you influence people and you don't even know it.
Wow, wow, wow. Dope, dope. So with that being said, how important is it that we as dads, urban inner city black dads, how important is it that we be that first positive male role model that our children see? How important is that?
It's very important. Again, as I said earlier in an interview, moms get a lot of accolades. I was raised by a mother, so I know what it takes to raise children as a mom. But fathers have such an important role. I'm the father of two young ladies, and I build into them strength and confidence and independence and education and importance of standing on their own. And that's the role and responsibility that we have, particularly as black fathers, because we recognize, and I say this to dads all the time who I have the opportunity to meet with, is that you're not always going to be their only influence. And when they start having those other influences, you want them to hear that voice in the back of their head. You want them to feel your presence and feel your example, so that it creates for them those internal guide rails, if you will, to be able to make good decisions. But also, what's very, very important is, as black fathers, we have to be able to embrace their mistakes. And that's where it typically falls
Wow.
apart, not just for us as black fathers, but fathers across the board, as we condemn them because they make mistakes. One of the things that we talk about in my mentoring program is, how do we come back from failure? How do we come back from mistakes? Because we've all made some mistakes. And thank God for the second and third chance we've been given in our lives. But we've got to embrace their mistakes. We'll hold them accountable. And if that means going to court and spending some time or paying fines, whatever it means, we're going to do that. But we are definitely going to model for them what we expect, and then inspect what we expect.
Wow, wow, amazing, amazing. Director Clark, 19.7 million homes are fatherless in our country. What can we do as men, as dads? unapologetically, this is Black History Month, and our focus is on our Black dads. Because unfortunately, we lead the numbers when you start talking about, oh my God, let's not even get into the list of where we lead numbers. But fatherless homes are one of those. What can we do as dads, not only Black, but just in general, because we have representation in the room from all races.
Sure.
We serve all races in our programs. It's amazing that we get an opportunity to do that. But what can we do specifically when you start talking about urban, inner city community families? What can we do as dads, as men, to reduce that number?
So through our exampling, here's what's important is we have to return to motivating young men who become fathers to understand what it means to become dads, to be able to spend that time, to be able to build into our children and meet them right where they are, and then allow them to meet you right where they are, right where we are as Black dads. And it doesn't take being the safety director or making a certain amount of money. It's about demonstrating how much you care. As I shared earlier, it doesn't matter how much you make, it matters how much you care, and building into them. One of the aspects that I think that we have fallen away from that I miss personally, and I know many of us that have some seasoning on us in this room miss, is the benefit of storytelling. We can remember when there was only 3 channels on television and the TV went off and we sat around storytelling, right? Storytelling. We've fallen away from that storytelling, or our children don't want to hear the stories about back in the day and what we had to do and how we overcame. But in those stories, we demonstrated power and perseverance, and we demonstrated honor and cultural integrity. And we've got to return to that somehow and be able to understand the value of that storytelling, which dates all the way back to slavery when slaves could not write, they could not read, but they could tell stories that transcended the generations. And we've got to somehow get back to that so that we can inspire our children and motivate our fathers and our mothers to understand the value of building into our children.
Wow, that's amazing that you would say that. We were talking about this a little bit in the back. You know, growing up, I grew up right here in Franklin County. I grew up in, well, I grew moving around a lot, but uh, I grew up the early part of my years in Southfield. And Southfield during that time was a really, really great community for African American families. It was kind of like the Black Bexley, if you will. And when we talk about the idea and concept of a village, right? And how it takes a village to raise a family or an individual. I remember the village, right? I can remember every family that stayed on my block. We had the Clemens, we had the Bakers, we had the Howards, we had, you know, I could just go on and on. And I think that if we had that today, that would aid in us reducing the number of young people that feel like nobody cares, that feel like they don't have any reason to live. Because I can remember getting in trouble down the street on the corner, and by the time I got home, I had already gotten chastised about 3 times, and then I got it again when I got home. Right?
Chastise,
Is that
chastise.
is that just
That's
me?
what
Is
you're calling
anybody
it.
else in here? Anybody else remember that?
Chastise. That's what he's calling it.
Yeah, yeah. That did I say that? I said it. I'm old. Jesus, Lord have mercy. Or whooping.
Okay, there you go. Thank you.
But I can remember that, and I think that because we live in a day and time now where you got moms and dads that don't say nothing to mine. That's my child. If you see him do something, come get me. Don't say nothing to him. But when I knew that I had to carry myself a certain way down the street, I acted different, and I think that as men, the other thing too is we need each other, right? As men, as dads, as moms, we need one another, and I need you to help me keep my son in check, right? I need you if you see him out of line, and I need you to know that it's okay if you do check him because I know that you have his best interest in mind. You're not doing it to be mean. You're not doing it but because I know your daddy. I'm gonna get you together. Do you think that has anything to do with what we're seeing today?
It absolutely has something to do with it, as you call getting chastised from the corner back home. Okay, I'm still uncomfortable because I got chastised. So, but here's the point: we have shifted as a community, as a collective community, not just the Black community. And I'll share it this way: we went from a front porch society to a back deck society where we just
Wow.
hung out on our back decks and no longer,
Wow.
some homes aren't even built with front porches anymore. But when we hung out on the front porches watching our kids, and you go down and you see Roscoe at the corner get your car fixed, and then he come up and do something, get plumbing done, and get the washing machine fixed, or what, we were a community, and our children watched that. They watched that. And they used to sit in the other room, because I was one of them, and you watched the card games and you watched this, because we didn't have television and the internet to keep us busy. So we kept busy with each other, and our children watched that. And they learned lessons from that, about that cohesiveness, that togetherness. And even if there were arguments at the card game, at the end of the day, we all came back together and we were one. And that has been lost because of technology and the internet and who's on social media. And you look at kids, and this is what you see. They're like down in their phones, they're not paying attention to each other. So we have to be able to model that. Some parents are limiting technology time. Okay, great. Having conversations, story time, not watching television at all, maybe on the weekends. And we've just got to be able to create that shift where we refocus ourselves back on being together instead of allowing technology to pull us apart.
Wow. Wow. Amazing. Amazing. Um, Director Clark, last year was the deadliest year in the history of Columbus. I remember during my time, it was right when, and I know you've been away for some time, and I don't know how familiar you are with Columbus, but back in my day, that's when the 22nd Bloods was kind of, and Crips and Bloods was kind of really the thing, and it was bad, but it wasn't bad like we see now.
Mm.
Um, what role do we, again, as dads, as men in our communities, play in helping reduce the crime rate in our cities? These are, last year we launched Fathers of Columbus Murdered Children, our agency, uh, and the goal of that was to offer support to fathers who have lost a child to violence.
Mhm.
And it blew me away, Director Clark, that even myself had so many friends that I grew up with who's lost a son. I got one homie who's lost all three of his sons. And when we talk about the violence that we're experiencing in our communities, and I said this earlier and I'm going to say it again, and I'll probably say it 2 or 3 more times before the night is over. I believe that we have to be at the forefront of the solution. Um, so that's my answer. I guess I just answered your question too, part of your question, but whatever. We good. We're gonna be all right. What's your thoughts? What you think? What role we play in that?
You're absolutely right, and I, while not having lived in Columbus and just lived up in Youngstown, I also had the opportunity to live for 7 years in Chicago, working gangs with the FBI, in charge of the gang program in Los Angeles for 12 years, work internationally. So I'm very, very familiar with what crime and violence looks like in communities of color. And it doesn't matter that it's Columbus per se. But here's where we are. We have to be proactively involved in our children's lives and building into them. And unfortunately, we know that there's toxic relationships, there's toxic moms that keep fathers away from their children, and then there's an evolution there, right? We have to be able to address some of that, certainly address the mental health issues, the substance abuse issues, the addiction issues, and we as men have got to be in a position to model for our children what is expected and then inspect what we expect. But then model that, right? And we've got to be out there doing it, showing them how to do it, motivating them to do it, demonstrating to them, as I demonstrated to my daughters, what the value of hard work is, what the value of integrity is, what the value of truth telling is. And we've got to return to that. And here's the thing I also want to say is that we have communities, we have dads right now, moms right now who are doing it. And we need to celebrate them who are getting it done every single day. Dads who are playing the role of mom, moms who are playing the role of dad, and communities that are getting it done. And you mentioned the record violence. Certainly we have. And there's a multitude of layers that are causations of that, because we have to recognize that crime, and certainly homicide, is a manifestation of a lot of other causes in our communities, particularly communities of color. But we have to be engaged with the available resources, the available programming. And here's what made that difficult. It's COVID. COVID made that difficult for us to connect. You can see the room here. There should be 500 people here having this conversation. But COVID challenges us to be able to engage proactively and aggressively the way that we need to, not the way that we want to, but the way that we need to today. And be able to engage our children in a proactive way that really starts to hold them accountable. Because here's what we know, those who work in youth space, we know that they want to be held accountable. We know that they want to be disciplined because that demonstrates that they are cared for, that they are loved, and that they are in a position to be nurtured. And we have fallen away from that, but we have to fall back into that so that we can begin to reduce the numbers while addressing some of the other manifestations that are some of the causations of that as well.
Wow, wow, wow. Good stuff. Good stuff. Y'all enjoying yourself? All right, all right, all right. We have a lot of men. You mentioned this, and women. Well, let me say this. What do you say to the guy who has one foot in the streets, one foot in the family? I know a lot of guys who, although they're in the streets doing their thing, they're still solid when it comes to being a great father and want to change, but doesn't have a template, has never seen anybody change. All he's seen is drug sales, all he's seen is drug dealers, all he's seen is shooting dice. I mean, whatever.
Mhm.
What do you say to that guy who has one foot in the streets, one foot in the family, and wants to change, but just can't seem how to find his way to 100% go straight, go clean? What do you say to that dad?
Sure. There's two things. You're modeling what you're expecting. You have to be able to model something very different. And then two, you have to find a network. You have to find a group that holds you accountable to doing certain things that are important to your family and that are important to you and important to that example that you're setting. Because we make the mistake in thinking that children don't know. You know, when our parents would be around us and they'd be talking in pig Latin or whatever, they would be thinking that we didn't really understand. Well, our children can get on the internet and research things immediately and really understand what we're talking about. So they're gonna check us basically, and it's okay to fail. It's okay to not get it done every single day as long as you accept responsibility and accountability for that, and then be able to demonstrate I didn't quite make it today. I went out and looked for jobs, but I didn't get any jobs or any interviews or whatever the case may be. But you know what? I'm gonna get up in the morning and go try again. And I may have lost a job or got laid off because of the pandemic, but you know what? I'm going to get up, I'm going to get dressed, and I'm going to go try again tomorrow. And that's what you're teaching, the perseverance. The perseverance, because we've all got to persevere. We all come from a perseverance place, and you're teaching in everything you do. So you got to make sure that you can lean into that network and have people that you can talk to, whether that's professional services, neighborhood services, or just family orientations, to be able to just lean on each other and help each other through that process. And that's how we build back that village you were talking about earlier.
Wow, that's amazing. Um, you know, as you were talking, I just thought I had a moment, and I'm just so thankful that we get to do the work that we do, working with men, working with dads, predominantly from the urban community, inner city community, because we get to provide that space, right? We get to provide that network of other dads, other men that simply just want to be the best dad possible. And they get to come to our sessions and they get to be around other dads that are just striving to be the best dad possible.
Sure.
And I tell my team all the time, we have to take advantage of each and every dad that comes into our program, because for so many of our dads, this is the only positive space that they have to come to. This is the only positive energy that they have to come to. This is maybe one of the only places that they can come, talk about their goals, their dreams, and desires, and someone not make them seem stupid, because they have desires to change, because they want to do better, they want to be better. So I'm just so excited and so thankful and so humbled that we get to create that space
Sure.
that you're talking about.
You know, one of the things, in my opinion, this is just Robert 101, the three most difficult words for a man to say, the three most difficult words is, I need help. And when you're able to put yourself into a space that doesn't include ego, that doesn't include all the bravado that we bring to the day as men, and just say, I need help, you put yourself in a very different space to not only help yourself, but help the people who are watching you, help your kids who are watching you to be able to say, I need help. This is why so many kids are struggling in school, because they're afraid to say, I need help with math and I need help with science or whatever they need help with. They're afraid to say, I need help. But when you demonstrate that, then that fear goes away, that stigma goes away, and it's not about ego, it's about I want to get better, and I'm taking responsibility for whatever shortcoming I have, and I'm asking for help.
Wow, wow, that's amazing. It leads me right into my next question, and we getting ready to wrap this segment up. And we want to give time for questions. If anyone has questions for Director Clark, there's a QR code you can scan there and present your questions, or you could text it there from the QR code. Leads me right into my next question about mental health. Now, I'm not a mental health expert. I'm not a licensed social worker. We got one in here. That's the inside between me and Alicia. Um, but mental health, we as black men, urban inner city families, dads in general, men in general, have a hard time asking for that help. And when you start talking about mental health, we go undiagnosed and untreated at alarming rates. Something about us as being the way we wired, we just not asking for help. I think some of it is the way we were raised, right? We were raised to be men, to be, macho. I can remember growing up, stop that crying, you crying like a little girl. It's like, dude, I just fell and I can see my white meat in my knee. Like, I can't cry. Like, what I'm supposed to do? Like, but well, stop crying, get up. Maybe you was allowed to cry a little bit if you was bleeding, because they'd be like, you ain't bleeding, you all right. But maybe it's just me. When we start talking about mental health, when we start talking about asking for help, and you kind of talked about this, but how important is it that we as black men, number one, start having the conversation, and then number two, let our other dads, other men know that we rock with, let them know that it's okay again. Go sit down and talk to somebody. Go get a checkup. We had a mental health episode once on our dad talk. Dad talk is coming back, by the way. And we had a licensed social worker therapist. I always get them mixed up, and they be getting mad too when you mix their titles up. But whatever, y'all gonna be all right tonight. They laughing at me. But y'all done made me forget what I was saying. Why is that important? Why is that important?
Here's why it's important, because in our communities of color, trauma takes on a very different aspect and definition. I am a victim of trauma at multiple layers, and we have to recognize that that trauma exists in our children. Our children watch it. Let me tell you a quick story. When I was on the Youngstown Police Department SWAT team, we did an entry into a drug house, and we threw what you know to be flashbangs, those things that explode in the homes and make a lot of noise. Yeah, something like that. Right. Yep. Exactly.
I seen it on TV.
Right. So by the time that we got upstairs, which was probably a minute and a half, I would imagine, there were two children in bed that never woke up the whole time we were there. And it just made me realize, like, what were they going through that they never woke up through this whole encounter with law enforcement? It's trauma. And being able to recognize, understand, embrace that trauma, seek the help, but at various levels in our children, in our moms, and our dads, in our community, because our trauma exists at very different levels. And I'm talking about trauma. Am I going to put food on the table today? Am I going to flip the switch and the lights are going to come on? Am I going to get up in the morning and my car is still out there? Am I going to still have a job? And all the other things that we sort of forget, right, that impacts predominantly communities of color. We have to create an opportunity to embrace that trauma and treat that trauma as early as we can start treating it, so that our children have an opportunity to grow up healthy and be able to process the things that they're going to go through, because they're experiencing trauma everywhere. They hear the police sirens, they hear the helicopters, they hear the gunshots. You see on the news constantly bullets coming through homes and people getting hit in homes. Individuals who have to live in those environments are experiencing trauma that goes unchecked. And you grow up as adults with this trauma and this scabbing, if you will, that just constantly gets ripped open, constantly gets ripped open. And we've got to be able to address that if we ultimately want to be able to address the stability and return to stability in our communities of color, and certainly allow fathers and dads and moms to really embrace their families and their children and allow them to grow up as healthy as possible.
Man, this dude is good, man. I don't. Is it just me? This guy is cold. All right. As you were thinking about that, as you were saying that, I was thinking. I could tell you, I don't have the training that you have. I've not been in the academy school and all of that, but I can probably tell you if I hear a gunshot, what type of gun it is. I am frequent with. I was talking about this the other day with my team. We always have hood stories for some reason in my office, but whatever. I know the sound of a cop engine, right? I could tell you if that's a cop because of the trauma associated with my childhood and growing up.
Mhm.
It's not okay when we've witnessed so many murders that death is now normalized,
Mhm.
right? We see so many funerals, um, so many issues of violence to where now it's just normal. And we have to do something about that. We cannot continue to go through our days and our lives and not get some help. It's not, it's okay. And it's okay to ask for that help. It's okay for you to, as a man, say, hey man, I need someone to talk to. One of the problems is, and I gotta hurry it because they're doing this to me in the back. Um, one of the things that we've had a problem with is finding culturally relevant counselors, culturally relevant agencies that are not booked till next year that can see our dads and help our dads out. And so we're excited. And if there's anybody in the room that has resources or can help with that, we're open to that. One more question and then we're done. Um, what do you say to if a mom and a dad grew up in a single family, didn't have a mom and a dad, doesn't have a template of how to give and receive love from one another? We see this a lot in urban families and some of the families that we serve. They didn't see dad and mom together in a relationship. And so because they didn't have it, they don't know how to give or receive love themselves.
Right.
But we get moms and dads together in our families, in our programming, and dads to be and moms to be. And I say it all the time that at least at this moment, they are together and they want to be together. What would your advice be to that family that at least at this moment want to be together, want to make it as a family? Because one of the missions of, or the mission of our organization is to stabilize family and to help families to overcome poverty. What would be your advice to that family that didn't have that template, that want to make it, want to be the best family possible?
Sure. What I would say is focus on the child. And that's what I've had to do personally. I didn't have that growing up because I lost my father so early, but it's focus on the child because they need you. And I would encourage them to do that. And if you focus on the child and celebrate them, celebrate their accomplishments, celebrate the fact that they are growing and achieving, and just celebrate them and focus on them and try as hard as it is sometimes to not bring toxicity into the situation because of your personal issues and your issues maybe with each other, and focusing on the child and understand that you have a responsibility to build this human being that you've made into as healthy of an adult as possible. And that's your responsibility. And then seek the help, seek counseling, seek resources, seek programming, seek mentorship programs, which I have been involved with for several years, because there are programs out there and resources out there that can help you do that as mothers, as fathers, and certainly trying to raise children together. Whether you are together or not, there are resources and programming out there to do that.
We tell our dads all the time, it's not about you, it's not about mom, it's about the child. And so we believe that, again, what you said is a key recipe for success. All right, we're gonna take a couple of questions. Lewis, you wanna come on up? Do we have some questions? If not, do we have some questions? All right.
Any yet, but the same tool you used to answer those questions earlier, go ahead and submit your questions for Mr. Clark there. Those of you who may have came in a little later, there's a piece of paper there, scanner QR code on your table. Scan that, and you can actually participate in the conversation today. So if you have a question, you can go ahead and throw it in there, and we can ask it directly to Director Clark. We're waiting for questions. Let's see. Okay, we have a question. We have one question. Let's do this one. It says, oh, this is a good question. It says, I get to read it first.
Yeah, because y'all know he's screening them. I said, make sure you screen them questions.
Good answer.
It says, I'm a man who does not have any children but have a heart for the young men in my community. I'm not from the city, but I want to help. What advice do you have or programs do you know I can assist in?
I would say partner with my
You
new
took
partner
the words
right
out
here.
my mouth.
Yeah,
Doctor, you all right
here.
with me, right? You all right with me because that's what I was going to say.
Yeah, there's a bunch of programming in the city that you would be able to volunteer with. I would ask you to check your neighborhood church, because one of the things that we know is a fact is that our young people have fallen away from the church, don't want to go to church for a variety of reasons, and being able to just have round table conversations. I'm not even talking about mentoring, just opportunities to just come in and just simply chop it up. Because a lot of times they don't feel like they have people they can go to and just have conversations that won't be judgmental, that won't criticize them, that won't condemn them, that may not embrace their mistakes, whatever the case they may be. Being able to create that opportunity to build into the life of a child, a young person, is absolutely critical, because I know that they are hungry for it.
On a serious note, we would love, we're always looking for mentors. We're always looking for other men that can be role models to the dads that we serve. So on a serious note, please see someone from my staff, Lewis, and we'll get your contact information to see how you may be able to play a role. We got time for one more question.
It says here, Director Clark, you mentioned the need to persevere. How can I encourage others to persevere when they feel they have no hope?
This is a conversation we just had not too long ago about hope. Let me answer that question this way. I had a conversation with the head of the downtown business community, and I'm talking about the nationwides and so on and so forth. And after our conversation, he says, Director Clark, what can we do to help? I says, here's what you can do. Understand this, that downtown and the buildings downtown is like Emerald City to our communities, and particularly to our children, places they don't think they'll ever be able to go and eat, work, recreate, or whatever the case may be. We have to change that dynamic. Restoring hope is so critical. And I'm not talking about giving them summer jobs to empty trash cans and cut grass. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about journeyman programs to bring them in, to teach them how to sell insurance, teach them how to do the things that take place in those buildings. Because here's what's going to happen. They're going to come to work there in a journeyman program. They're going to return to their communities, wherever that is in Columbus, and they're going to say, you know where I work? You know what I'm learning? And it's going to restore hope. Like man, like, dog, you down there? You like doing it like that? And that's how we begin to rebuild hope. That's the bigger part. We are responsible for hope. We are the messengers of hope, right? I've made mistakes. I've been to jail two, 3 times. I'm out. I'm staying clean. I'm demonstrating my responsibility to myself, to my family, to my kids. I pick them up. I help them with their homework. We're getting it done in this pandemic. We've got to restore hope, but we are the keepers. We are the gatekeepers of hope.
Awesome. Good stuff. Ain't nothing. I think we're going to drop the mic on that one. Can y'all do me a favor and give Director Clark a round of applause?
I appreciate you, brother. Thank you.